Most people think they know what moving to Boston is all about. Fenway Park, colonial America, the historic charm there, and maybe a few snowy winters. And it is those things, to be certain. But the truth is, there's a whole side of Boston life that you don't necessarily learn about from the relocation guides, the brochures, maybe even from your friends. So in this video, I'm going to share the Boston I've come to know after moving to the area and living here for now about 15 years. So if you're planning to move to Boston, you're not going to want to miss this. So over the years of helping people relocate to Boston and the greater Boston area, I've learned something important. No matter how much research you do, there's always some things about the city that take you by surprise. Some of them are challenges, some of them are wonderful opportunities, but they all shape your day-to-day life and routine here in ways that you don't necessarily expect or know going in. So today I'm going to try and pull back the curtain and give you a look at some of the things that people may not mention about Boston and what it's like to live here. So the real truths that really prepare you for when you're about to take that plunge, or when you do take that plunge and relocate here to the greater Boston area or Boston itself. So the first thing to know about Boston is it's not a very big city, at least compared to other major cities across the country. It's really a kind of geographically compact. But despite maybe its geographic smallness, again, compared to other cities, it is jam-packed with micro neighborhoods, for lack of a better term. So choosing where you want to live isn't just about the kind of home you want to live in, single family, townhome, condo, what have you. I mean, it's going to play a factor, but each of these micro neighborhoods has its own distinct character, atmosphere, feel, vibe, whatever term you want to use. And so choosing the right neighborhood is about finding that character that you think is best going to match you and your lifestyle and your day-to-day. And we don't need to go through every neighborhood right now, but we can start to go through some of them. And the first one that pops to mind, I think when people picture Boston and kind of that historic charm, is Beacon Hill. And Beacon Hill has a ton of historic charm. Very much has those brownstones lining the streets, the old style gaslight lighting that lines Charles Street, for example. And depending on what street you go down or what corner you accidentally turn, you can feel like you're walking through historic, colonial, Revolutionary War Boston. A lot of charm there. A lot of boutique shops, restaurants, coffee shops lining Charles Street, lining these Beacon Hill streets. So tiny streets, a lot of charm. Parking can be a challenge. You could say that of a ton, really all the neighborhoods in Boston, I would say. But when people think about historic Boston, they think about Beacon Hill. It also has the Massachusetts State House within the neighborhood boundaries, so a little bit of a government feel. And also it has Boston Common, the biggest park in Boston. So you get that historic charm, you get the green space, and also the seat of government in Massachusetts as well. But again, when people think about Boston, it's usually they're picturing Beacon Hill. Now you can also get some of that, again, historic charm and historic feel in a neighborhood like the South End, which is south of Boston, not to be confused with South Boston, even though they're right next to each other. Very different vibes for each of these neighborhoods. But you will see very much, again, the Victorian brownstones lining the streets of the South End. Also has a great arts community. You have Harrison Avenue, which has a bunch of galleries and art installations there. You have great event space and theater space on Tremont Street, for example, the Huntington Theater Company. So if you want kind of that historic charm, maybe a little bit more of an arts feel, and definitely I'd say a cheaper price point than Beacon Hill, South End could definitely be a neighborhood for you. Now, South Boston is a neighborhood that kind of has one foot in the urban field because Boston is definitely right there, and you do have a lot of condos, multifamilies, double-deckers, triple-deckers lining the streets. So you have that urban aspect, but it's right by the waterfront, harbor, ocean. You can be from kind of down in the middle or downtown South Boston, or Southie as it's known, and a couple minutes later you can be on the beach enjoying the sun and the water. So South Boston, very much, I think, a neighborhood where you see a lot of people soon after school or fresh into their, adult life. You see a lot of people, young professionals, finding their way to South Boston. But again, a very different feel from South End, even though they're right next to each other. Now, the other neighborhood, which wasn't a neighborhood really not that long ago, is Seaport. This was very much what it sounds like it was back in the day, a port. And so a lot of industry, not a lot of residential area at all, or residential options, but it has exploded over the last couple of years. So you were seeing luxury condos, high-rise buildings with penthouse apartments, penthouse condominiums that are beautiful. It's right on the waterfront. So a ton of great restaurants, against luxury living. It feels like it feels like a different world, really, when you compare it to the historic charm and historic nature of a lot of areas of Boston. And then you come, east, basically the Seaport, and it's just become this new neighborhood or newer neighborhood that's popped up over the last 10, 15 years, we'll call it. And it's still being developed as we speak. So again, a lot of different neighborhoods, again, each with its own atmosphere, vibe, character, and hopefully you're able to find that neighborhood that best matches up with the life you want to set up here in Boston. And when you find that neighborhood, it's going to help dictate your day-to-day and your rhythm, from your local coffee shop to maybe where you go for a stroll or a jog, and maybe it becomes the basis of your social circle, your friend network here in Boston. So if you're curious about which Boston neighborhood might be your best fit, drop a comment below and let me know kind of what you're thinking might be the best fit for you. I will definitely give you my honest recommendation. So one underrated aspect of Boston, I feel, is the restaurant and food scene, because when I think people think of food in Boston, they think clam chowder or chowder, if you're a Bostonian, or lobster rolls, which is ironic, by the way, because there's two types of lobster rolls. There's Maine lobster roll, which is the cold lobster with the mayo and other accoutrement mixed in, and then you have Connecticut style lobster roll, which is the toasted bun, the warm lobster, melted butter. I personally am a Connecticut style lobster roll lover, but you think lobster roll Massachusetts, you have Maine and Connecticut north and south, but there's no Massachusetts style. But anyway, got off in a little bit of a diatribe there. But Boston has a very diverse, I think, food culture and food scene here. And not to get into every different neighborhood and what it provides, but again, so many different options. And one that I think stands out right from the get-go, you hear a lot about the North End, which is essentially the Little Italy of Boston, on the north side of Boston, North End, right? And there you can find a ton of Italian restaurants. You go down Hanover Street, and not only are they lining Hanover Street, but you go down the side streets, you're going to find cute little places there, and some of the best Italian food I think you'll ever have in your life, certainly in Boston. Some of the best meals I've had in Boston and anywhere have been in the North End. So not only do you have that authentic Italian cuisine, but you have the old world trattorias, you have the the coffee shops lining the streets where you can enjoy espresso or just enjoy the people watching on a nice sunny weekend day or afternoon. You have the old style Italian bakeries with the cannolis and the pastries. There's two kind of competing bakeries, if you will. You hear a lot about Modern and Mike's Pastries. They're across the street and kind of a couple blocks down from another. And people always ask, oh, where's your favorite cannoli from, Mike's or Modern? I say, why choose? Get one of each and just enjoy it. So North End is where you're going to find a lot of that great Italian cuisine. You can go to other sections of the city for, I guess, more unique cuisines, if you will. So I think of Dorchester a little bit, and Vietnamese food and Caribbean food, some of the best you'll find anywhere. You go to East Boston, and you're going to find maybe Peruvian and Salvadorian food. You go to South End, and you're going to have some great fusion restaurants, tapas, sushi as well, great wine bars, some trendy brunch spots. I think of the Beehive and their jazz brunch. That stands out. And you can also go to Back Bay, which is kind of the high-end retail section of Boston. And you're going to have some high-end restaurants. So Gordon Ramsay has his restaurant there. You're going to find, again, Italian, seafood, ramen, sushi. Really, you can find just about anything you want. Contessa, they're great food and great views as well. And I mentioned Gordon Ramsay already. So again, different neighborhoods to find certain cuisines, but you're going to find I think anything you want somewhere in Boston. And again, having lived some other places besides Boston, I would put Boston's food scene and the restaurants here up against any other city in the country. You have Michelin-starred restaurants in Boston. You have James Beard Award-winning and nominated chefs all throughout the city. So again, it's not just the seafood, the chowder, the lobster rolls. So many great restaurants and food options here in Boston. I love exploring them. Do it as often and as much as I can. So I think that's going to be an aspect that you enjoy when you move to Boston. So if you're looking for different restaurants or new restaurants to try, make sure you check out some of the neighborhood tours I do on this channel. A lot of content, a lot of those videos are about where I like to eat or grab a beverage, so make sure you check those out. Let's talk a moment about the culture in Boston, because Boston, of course, very much has that historic backdrop of colonial America, Revolutionary War America, and it's not hard to be someplace in Boston and have that be very prevalent. Right? But the culture goes beyond the history of Boston. And you have some wonderful museums here. And the culture goes beyond the museums as well. But I mean, you have some wonderful museums in the Museum of Fine Arts, Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. You have the ICA down in the seaport on the waterfront. Each of those are very unique. And I've been to all of those several times, and they're all wonderful. So you have some great museums in Boston to check out. But again, it goes beyond the history, it goes beyond the museums even. So you have the Boston Common, you have the Public Gardens, which host concerts and festivals constantly, it seems. You have, even though this is not Boston, it's Cambridge, you have Boston Calling, which is at the Harvard Athletic Complex, and is a 3-day outdoor festival, typically over Memorial Day weekend. It's been there for years. Last year's headliners were Avril Lavigne, Dave Matthews Band, and Luke Bryant, I believe. They're taking a year off for 2026 with the World Cup in town, but they'll be back at it for 2027. So you have that aspect as well. You have some great music venues in Boston. MGM Music Hall, House of Blues. You have Middle East over in Cambridge, again, kind of bouncing back and forth across the Charles River. Fenway Park has great concerts and is definitely kind of a nightlife hub. So it's not just Red Sox games at Fenway Park. They have some great acts coming through. Paul McCartney coming through not too long ago, Billy Joel as well. I think New Kids on the Block were there for a series of nights not too long ago. So Fenway has become very much a concert venue as well. And kind of on a smaller scale, I mean, the local neighborhoods, these micro neighborhoods, let's just call them neighborhoods, it seems they're always bringing block parties or street fairs. It feels like you can find something like that some weekend or every weekend somewhere in Boston. Again, a ton of culture available constantly or perpetually in Boston, whether you're visiting a museum, whether you're going to check out some live music, whether you're going to the theater district, the Emerson Theater, the Boston Opera House, have great shows that preview in Boston sometimes before going to Broadway. Sometimes they come up and tour to Boston after having a run on Broadway as well. So between the museums, the music, the theater, and the art available, not only in places like the museums we mentioned, but down the South End and those galleries and the art installations available there. So you're not lacking for culture in Boston, whether you're going to one of the bigger venues like Fenway Park for a concert, or the MFA to check out some art, or you're looking for a more local feel with some block parties, street fairs, or local community events in whichever neighborhood. Again, plenty of options culturally in Boston. All right, let's take a moment to talk about the housing and the housing market here in Boston. Because Boston, again, a historic city, an older city here. And so it very much blends a lot of the old with some of the new. So what are you going to find in Boston? Depends on where you're looking. And you can find what you're looking for certainly in different areas of Boston. If you're looking for a detached single-family home with a yard, you're not going to find that in downtown Boston. You're going to have to go towards the outer edges of Boston proper. So you're talking about a Dorchester or Jamaica Plain. You may even need to go outside of those Boston city limits, across the river to Cambridge or Somerville, or maybe across the harbor to East Boston. Or maybe you're going to just again, past the boundaries of Boston to a suburb like Brookline or Milton, Boston adjacent, but again, a little more space available. But as you're working back towards Boston, you're going to see, again, a lot of history when it comes to some of the houses or some of the homes, Victorian brownstones like we discussed. If you go down Com Ave through Boston and Back Bay, you're going to see the Tudor Gothic architecture with the huge stone facades, and some of those are going to be single family units detached, again, lining the streets. And some of those have been converted into multiple condominiums, and same thing with Victorian brownstones as well. You'll see double deckers, triple deckers that have been converted into, again, condominiums or apartments. So you can find a little bit of everything. But again, a lot of these units marry some of the old with some of the new. So you're going to see some of these very old historic condominiums, let's say, for example, that have been renovated and or updated with some modern amenities. Have they had central air installed? Have they renovated the kitchen? Have they maybe knocked down a wall or two to combat some of the quirky layouts that you'll see in some of these more historic homes in and around Boston? So Boston has done a very good job, I think, of updating the old with the new, or the colonial with the modern. And depending on where you are, if you go to Seaport, again, that is a neighborhood that very much has just developed and become a neighborhood over the last decade or so. So you're going to see a lot of modern amenities, modern builds there with things like roof decks and gyms, maybe less character or less charm compared to some of the more historic areas of Boston proper. But again, a lot of development in and around Boston, so where you can find those modern amenities or that new construction or that new renovation. And part of that is due to the inventory. And it's getting better here in Boston like it is in a lot of different areas, or basically the country overall, but it is still very challenging and can be tough. I mean, you go to open houses, it can feel a little daunting when you look through or walking around and see the other potential buyers and the potential competition. And it's going to be key, no matter what, to work with a local realtor, because one, they're just going to be able to help you find maybe some hidden gems, maybe some opportunities for some homes that have lingered on the market a little bit longer, and you can kind of swoop in and maybe get that offer accepted, or working with a local realtor such that you can make sure that your offer comes out on top in a competitive multiple offer situation. Okay, I don't want to get into the prices and all of that because it changes constantly, but just know that Boston's housing market right now is challenging. We have some other videos on this channel on how best to put forth a strong offer and all the steps to make sure you're having success in your home search. But just know that Boston has such unique architecture and such a unique array of homes, from the old to the new. You're going to be able to find hopefully something that's going to match what you're looking for and your price point, but also know that working with a local realtor such that you can identify the right spot in this challenging market and be able to come out with success, either for something that is new to the market. Again, things seemingly come off the market with an offer accepted as soon as they go on, sometimes here in Boston, or whether you're able to find something that matches what you're looking for, that has somehow managed to remain on the market for a while. So not to repeat myself, but again, Boston's market can be a challenge. And if you're thinking about buying in Boston, drop me a message offline here. I can start to walk you through how the home search really works here and some of the steps towards success that we can take. When you think about any city, let alone Boston, I'm not sure if nature and the outdoors is the first thing that comes to mind. I think, like most people, you think urban environment, and Boston certainly is that, but it's a city that is right on the water and has a lot of green space. I think unbeknownst to a lot of people who are unfamiliar with Boston, who haven't had a chance to go out and explore and take in all the city. First off, you have the Charles River Esplanade. So Charles River cutting through Boston, or we're actually separating Boston and Cambridge and other cities on the other side of the river, the north side of the Charles River. And the Esplanade, great green space that is perfect for runs, biking. They have kayaking, paddleboarding, if you're so inclined, sailing opportunities as well. Parks for youth sports, adult sports. So the Esplanade, just a great place to just kind of sit down, have a picnic, or just sit down, enjoy a book. So that's right next to Back Bay. And of course, next to the Charles River Esplanade. You have Arnold Arboretum, which is in Jamaica Plain, feels like a little kind of mini escape, a little oasis in the city. You have the Emerald Necklace, which is a series of green spaces and parks that span Boston through Jamaica Plain and onward. You have the Harbor Islands, which just are a short ferry ride away. So all these different islands in Boston Harbor that you can visit, take a ferry, take a boat, go splash in the water, enjoy the dunes, enjoy the sand, enjoy the nature there on the ferry islands, or rather the harbor islands as well. So between the Boston Common, the Emerald Necklace, the Esplanade, the waterfront in general, we're going to get more into the waterfront here in this next little section. The outdoors and the nature definitely available there for you. So you don't need to really, you have the opportunity to go to a New Hampshire, a Maine, the Cape, maybe down to Connecticut or the Berkshires out west. But at the end of the day, you don't really need to enjoy the nature and the outdoors in Boston, because there's plenty available in the city itself that you don't need to travel very far to enjoy it. Now, I know we were just talking about the outdoors and nature and the waterfront, but I don't want to get too much into the waterfront because it deserves its own section here. Because listen, I am a person that grew up on the water. I'm a little bit of a water bug from the time I was, well, however this old is, maybe more this old, whatever. We're losing the shot. But I've grown up around water, and so I love being in a place like Boston where you're right on the waterfront, and really the waterfront opportunities and experiences are so numerous. We already talked about the Charles River Esplanade, again, right next to Back Bay, and the Esplanade overlooking the Charles River. And whether you're, again, just hanging out for a picnic or reading a book or enjoying a jog or a walk, or you're taking advantage of the paddle boats, the sailboats, or taking a yoga class, just to be down there by the water. And whether you're taking in those experiences or those opportunities, or you're just enjoying the view across the river to Cambridge, it can be stunning depending on the time of day, be it sunset or sunrise. But you have, again, the Charles River, and that river that cuts right through Boston and separates, again, Cambridge and the north side of the city from Back Bay and Boston itself. But then you have the harbor, and we didn't discuss the Boston Harbor Walk yet, which is a 43-mile stretch, or basically walkway, that lines the Boston waterfront, goes all the way from East Boston and around and down to Dorchester. So 43 miles, I mean, you can enjoy that and have a unique experience. Well, how many times, depending how far you're going and what section you're deciding to traverse that particular day. And so if you don't want to be in the water, but just enjoying the water, the Harbor Walk is a wonderful opportunity to do so. We already talked about the Harbor Islands and the different opportunities there. You can go down to a place like Charlestown and take in the tall ships, the USS Constitution, or Old Ironside as it's called. You can go across the river to East Boston to the tall ship, which is an old tall ship that's been converted into really a night spot. So restaurant, bar, one of the, I guess, the hottest places to go in East Boston or anywhere in Boston right now. But you can enjoy a night on the waterfront while being on a tall ship. It's pretty cool. But you have neighborhoods like the Seaport, or Charlestown and the Seaport, where you can go to a place like Pier 6 in Charlestown and enjoy the harbor and the sunsets and the water. You can go to, again, Seaport, and maybe you're hitting up Legal Seafood or Temescal, and they have the doors open to enjoy the open air, and again, the harbor and the pier and the waterfront there. So again, one of my favorite parts of Boston is how close to the water. You don't necessarily need to go to the Cape, again, New Hampshire, Maine, Connecticut, all the way down, I don't know, Jersey Shore to enjoy the water. I mean, if you want to go to the beach, that's a different story, but, or you can just go to South Boston, as we talked about earlier. But if you want to enjoy the water, you do not need to go very far. It's all right there in Boston. So we've already talked a little bit about the restaurants and food scene in Boston, but I want to get into a little bit more about the nightlife. It's more live than you think. but it gets a bad rap. And why is that? Well, Boston closes earlier compared to a lot of other major cities. So Boston has its last call just before 1 a.m. And you compare that to other cities where it's typically 2 a.m. or maybe 4 a.m. or maybe it goes all night. But no, Boston wraps up its weekends a little bit earlier compared to most. And maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. I guess it depends on who you are. But again, depending on the neighborhood and what you're trying to make happen, the nightlife opportunities and different experiences you can have are many in Boston. So we've talked about the theater. Again, you can head to the theater district and catch a show either at the Opera House or Emerson or the Huntington Theater Company in the South End. Live music available at venues like MGM, House of Blues, Roadrunners. When I think of live music, I think Alston and Cambridge as well, and kind of some of the smaller venues and kind of indie vibes in those particular neighborhoods. I think of a neighborhood or neighborhoods like Seaport and downtown, maybe Back Bay, where those are areas and maybe a night out, a little bit to see and be seen. Also great rooftop bar opportunities, especially in the Seaport, so a chance to enjoy the open air and those waterfront and those harbor views. And so if you're looking for that particular type of night out, you could do that as well. Also some club opportunities in the Seaport and downtown Crossing as well. So if you're looking for a little bit of a cozier evening or a quieter evening and some late night dining opportunities, I think of neighborhoods like North End and South End. I guess coincidentally enough, and maybe not right on Hanover Street because, again, a lot of foot traffic on Hanover Street as you're going through the North End. But again, a lot of side streets where you can enjoy a bite at a restaurant, outside the restaurant, on the sidewalk, sip some wine. Again, those opportunities in the South End as well. But just think of like quieter and cozier evening. Those are kind of the two neighborhoods that pop out. So again, Boston's nightlife is more diverse than I think people expect, and plenty of opportunity despite maybe the earlier closing time in Boston compared to some other cities. But nightlife, plenty to do here in Boston no matter what. Now let's say you've taken the leap or you've moved and you've relocated to Boston. I know that first year can be overwhelming. It can be a tough transition. And I think you can say that of any new town, new city that you move to. Again, you need that transition time to get adjusted. I mean, you're figuring out new streets, you're trying to figure out your neighborhood and the layout. Maybe you're trying to figure out the best way to commute to work and get back. You want to find your local coffee shop that you're going to stop in every morning. You want to find your restaurants. You want to find out about your new home and kind of the quirks that you only learn about after you've been living there for a while. And listen, I've lived a couple different places, a couple different cities, and sometimes I've moved to a place and early on I think I've made a mistake. But each time, and listen, I moved to Boston and liked it immediately, but I can understand people moving to Boston and maybe they're hit by that first winter and they're thinking, oh my, what have I done here? Or hey, I'm a Yankees fan living in Red Sox Nation. What have I done? Don't worry, Boston will grow on you. And because frankly, it's a great place to live. So it's about finding your spots. It's about finding your routine. It's about finding that, that go-to park that you go and hang out on the weekends, or finding that favorite restaurant that you go out to with friends on a Friday night. Finding that local coffee shop, whether you're grabbing, your latte in the morning or whatever your coffee order is. You find your routine. You find your spots. You find really your life here in Boston. So if you happen to be maybe in your first year or year one of Boston, if you're loving it, if you're having some struggles with the transition, again, DM me or drop them in the comments below. I would love to hear about it. Now, building off of that, if I can leave you with one, I could say, insider tip here about Boston, it's Boston rewards curiosity. Explore, explore, explore. Again, we're talking about finding your spots, finding kind of your nooks, your crannies, your life here in Boston. So again, my favorite thing to do is to go to different neighborhoods and get lost. So find the side streets, the parks, the local shops, stop into that place. Maybe you've walked by dozens of times before, but have never stopped in, or that bakery or that deli, and your experience just becomes so much more fruitful here and so much more rewarding in Boston. So the city has endless layers. It's like an onion. And it's part of what makes Boston really so magnetic and so wonderful after you settle in. So explore, get to know your city, get to know Boston. It's going to be a greater experience for it. So if you're thinking about moving to Boston or you're planning a move to Boston, hopefully this video has helped you learn a little bit more about all that this city encompasses. So if you are thinking about making that move, I'd love to help you out. You can DM me on Instagram at Mike O'Brien Homes, or you can email me directly at mikeobrienhomes@gmail.com. If you found this video helpful, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell. If you're nervous about moving to Boston or excited about moving to Boston, let me know in the comments below. And of course, if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you check out my Moving to Boston playlist. So I thank you for watching this one. We'll see you in the next one. And in the meantime, hope to see you in Boston sometime soon.